This is the Fifth Estate winning headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 27th of June 2019, and I am 2J.
I am JM.
And I am Miss K, your host. Again, in case you missed it, this is Winning Headlines. Let's take a look at today's headlines. The Star, Ruto death claim, 20 PSs, CEOs to record statements. Daily Nation, police turn to FBI in Ruto's murder saga. And finally, The Standard, Kibicho now wants Ruto investigated.
I think this is day 4 of the assassination saga.
That's
Yes,
right.
we began
That's
this on
right.
Monday.
Yeah.
It's so sad that when I come back, you're still here.
But it's taken an interesting turn today.
I do
It has.
like,
It has.
I do like
And
The
if we could
Standard.
begin with this one, we have it on good authority that this Standard headline is fake news.
Kibicho
This
now
is
wants
meant
to
to cast the PS for Interior in bad light.
I thought it's in good light. You see, if at all, from Monday we began with PSs, CSs having meetings at Lamada Hotel to discuss a death claim.
Yeah.
And he was convener of the meeting, but
Yeah.
has not recorded any statement. Now, what is the best way for me to stop this doing? I go and I say, you people, I am aggressed.
you know-
I'm being harassed.
And you could be right. So it's turned the tables around then. And so if it's true then, maybe he shouldn't disown it. Maybe this is a case which
It's a good flip. It's
works
a good flip.
for him.
And it works for him because it shows him as an embittered and embattled civil servant who's just
Yeah.
trying to do his job while this political animal
Is harassing him.
Absolutely. Is harassing him.
What does harassment even mean? Okay, those are my own questions.
Okay, before I'm saying,
Yes, is harassment a crime? Do you go to DCI to complain about harassment?
my question was, who is HR when you are in the public service and your boss is the DP? Who's HR? DCI.
DCI.
That's who you go to.
DCI.
But I have
on
a
the-
question.
yeah.
On this headline, we
Yeah.
have a 3-part criteria that we use to break down the headlines for you. We ask ourselves 3 questions. Is this headline speculative or is it topical? Is this headline repetitive or is it groundbreaking? And finally, is it thoughtful or just plain lazy?
So, based on what you've told us, we're going to call it speculation
Speculative.
outright. And
Yeah.
on that note, we toss it.
Toss it.
Goodbye.
Can we look at these 2 together? Ruto's death claim, PSs, CEOs to record statements, and police turn to FBI.
Yeah. You don't convene a committee to,
Of 20
to plan,
PSs, a bunch of
precisely,
CEO.
to plan
no.
a murder. This is not how it works. So
Yes.
this is also fake news. This is speculation.
I think
honestly
Prof
speaking.
made the good point that had this story mentioned maybe the names of the Artur brothers, for example,
Oh, yes.
I think it would add credibility to this
Credibility.
assassination story. But when
Artur
you have,
Sardassian and
they're trying to tell us that a convoy of PSs convened at a hotel to discuss how they're going to. It doesn't make sense.
Doesn't
no.
make
Well,
sense.
that is true. If you have those Eastern Europeans, you have this sense of ominous death threats. Because I really do ask myself the question, all these 20 people, how are we going to agree on one way to execute death and have it done quietly?
Exactly.
Hakuna siri ya watu wawili. How is there siri ya watu
Does
20?
not
No,
add up.
Doesn't add up.
And then when we look at the Daily Nation, I think
So can
somebody.
we toss this?
Oh, we're tossing this.
Oh, yeah, for
Instantly.
sure.
Or what?
Instantly.
I agree. Yeah.
Yes.
The Daily Nation, somebody had sent us a picture of a headline mirroring this, but from 1990, where it talked about pulling in Scotland Yard to help
To investigate the Opal murder.
Exactly. So I think this is a very interesting mirror
Yeah,
quite a few
yeah.
years later.
And what happened when they brought in the Scotland Yard at that time? Did it really change the fact?
Nothing.
So
It didn't, but I think the point here is that the FBI are supposed to come in and investigate this letter.
Yes.
And as you're saying, inject some sort of
Confidence, yeah.
credibility to show that the letter was fake. The letter is fabrication from some parties who want this, story out there to work to their advantage.
Yeah.
And I think that's not necessarily a bad idea, to kill this story altogether. Because I don't think it's good for country.
So what you do is you bring in the FBI, they
Yes.
authenticate the computer from which, in Karen specifically, and I do have to ask, why Karen? From which this letter came from. Then we get this person, we arrest them, and then we can put it to bed and we forget it ever happened.
And just show that this whole story just doesn't add up.
I have the opposite opinion. I feel that it's an Are we so useless as Kenyans that we have to call Americans to come and solve our
We're
problems?
not useless.
agree.
We're not useless. We know that the letter, for instance,
Or are
is
we
fake,
accepting
right?
our limitations?
But the thing is this: that all our institutions sometimes can end up being partisan, right? And so then the
You
third
have
party needs to come
third
in
party, yeah.
to kind of bring this perception of independence and that kind of thing.
Okay.
But I think this is a good headline.
I
What do you guys
agree,
think?
yeah.
I think this should be our winning headline.
I think, this will make
Yeah.
people pick it up. It's the first headline. It made me do a double take because I said, FBI, is this a movie? But I think it's a good headline.
Great.
I will take it because you guys. Today I'm gonna be nice. I'm gonna be nice because I truly believe
So-
in Tuje's last point that by the time we're going to the FBI, you guys.
Yeah.
This is
It's
our winning
okay.
headline.
It's our winning headline.
All right.
Keep it. On to our next segment, the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. And just like the headlines, we have a 3-part criteria that we use to break down the cartoons for you. We ask ourselves 2 questions. Is the cartoon humorous or is it dry? Is it satirical or is it pessimistic? And finally, is it effective or just plain lazy? But before we begin...
Yes, before we begin, we are overturning, with the concurrence of the producer, we are
Yes.
overturning yesterday's winning cartoon.
The host was not there. You were confused. You were rudderless.
Absolutely.
And you made a mistake.
Completely. This should have been the winning cartoon. In fact, I was watching Winning Headlines last night at 9 p.m. and I was wondering, how could you guys award it to Ndula? This is the winning cartoon.
Ozone's Boogeyman cartoon
Boogeyman. Brilliant.
is our cartoon of the day for yesterday. Overturned.
I'm not
Take
saying.
us to the cartoons of the day.
Today's cartoon.
Can I toss it?
Begin.
No.
That is the winning cartoon of yesterday. Just keep it here. I'm telling you. These rudderless people continuing in your rudderless motions. Daily Nation.
Yes.
Let's see what
we
your
have today.
apparent winning cartoon of yesterday has for us
Yes.
today.
All right. And I think all the cartoons today are
Yes.
Jaguar related.
Yeah.
And I think we
Jaguar-related.
can look at them all across the board together, then we'll be able to make a determination
Yes.
of who did
Fantastic.
Jaguar
Yeah.
best.
Yeah.
We have a cartoon, a caricature of Jaguar, and he has a jug on his head with a green liquid. I really don't know what the green liquid is. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
juice,
we
if
couldn't
it's
figure
pure,
that out.
if it's
I couldn't figure
brain
it out.
liquid.
Yeah.
I can't figure out what it is. But he's holding his pants like a rapper does and holding a mic, and the mic is up on his head at the jug. And it says here, Honorable xenophobic jug, in quotes, were half empty or half full, question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like
Okay,
this-
so what I would want to suggest today is that we look at Ndula
Sure.
Okay.
and Ozone concurrently.
Let's
Only
look at
because
everyone.
we've peddled this theory, right?
Yeah.
That Ozone is
Ndula.
actually Ndula in hiding. And today, I feel like we're beginning to prove this theory true.
I agree.
And before we do that, before we explain that, I think we should look at this cartoon.
Yeah, so
Ozone one.
what we're seeing here is Jaguar's head and then his brain, and in it is xenophobia. He's full of xenophobia. This is the the message being conveyed here. And then there's a cable, right? So there's a disconnect in terms of the plugs from the brain to his lyrics. These are lyrics from his songs.
Yeah.
Niki hustle juu chini ili nivuke boda wananigeukia kigeugeu, and so on and so forth.
So the context
before-
here is that Jaguar had said that he was going to burn down the stalls of the Chinese, the Tanzanians, who were taking away business from his constituencies. his constituents.
Yes. And then the point here is the Jaguar used to be, he's become a turncoat since he entered parliament.
Yes.
This is the message being conveyed by the Ozone cartoon.
But I have to say this. Okay, first let's say the third one, and then I'm going to give my comment on what
Yeah.
I think of what he did.
All right.
See, it's all your fault. And we have a caricature of the prince in his regalia, our president, Uhuru
Yes.
Kenyatta, Prime Minister Raila Odinga with his signature orange shirt, and what is it called?
Kalasinga.
Yeah.
DP Ruto. And Jaguar as a toddler.
Who has soiled his
Yeah,
diaper.
Soiled his diaper,
soiled the whole
area
This is
that they are
disgusting.
in. It's
But still
so
has
disgusting.
maintained the ability to take a selfie.
Oh, yeah, and his face is very clean.
Yeah, on the whole Jaguar thing,
I say we just, I don't know.
let me first give my comments.
Yes,
before
okay,
we-
give
before we
your
start the
comments,
toss,
because I
right?
really just want to
Lee
toss that
Iacocca was Lee Iacocca. I don't know if you've heard of him. Right? He was once the CEO of Chrysler.
Yes.
But before he joined Chrysler, he was at Ford Motor Company. I think he turned the company around.
Yeah.
But when he was fired under very harsh circumstances, he was bitter. But he reflected and he said, "Don't get bitter.
get even.
Okay.
And I think that's the point with these people who are feeling that Tanzanians, Chinese, East African citizens are taking our jobs. We shouldn't get bitter about it.
We should get even.
We should get even.
But you should also look at Jaguar, the position in which he stood. He was the MP. His constituents want to know what he's going to say. Well, he did go overboard in what he said, but the gist of it was that I will try and protect you from this external aggression.
However, I think the point that Ozone is trying to make in his cartoon is that previously when Jaguar was a musician, he would sing about how politicians take advantage of the people and the positions that they're in. But now there's this disconnect where he's talking about xenophobia and how he's going to remove these Tanzanians, these Chinese.
But he himself is
really going to? Yeah.
I don't know. I'd say of the three, if I'm to look at them side by side, I don't like Baby Jaguar. What do you guys think?
I agree. We toss it.
Yeah, no, we toss that.
I don't like Jaguar. I didn't get it.
And so
this
is the point I was making earlier. I think that this cartoon in The Nation was actually drawn by Ozone. And the one in the Star was drawn by Ndula. Because he is falling prey to Ozone's bad tabias, where he draws too much stuff and on the side and over-explains.
Can I
have it?
I get it?
Goodbye.
So we have a winning cartoon.
I'm very confused that Ozone has won for the third time in a row this week. The world is upside down.
And we have a winning cartoon from Ozone of the Star. And what is our final thought?
And now, our final thought. Today, it is inspired by a woman named Elizabeth Holmes, carrying on with our theme this week of college dropouts. So today, however, we're doing the flip, and she is a cautionary tale of dropping out of college possibly too early. So Elizabeth Holmes created a company. She was a CEO and founder of Theranos. And this company, she intended to democratize blood testing. So traditional blood testing is a whole situation. You go to the doctor, they prick you multiple times, they try to find your vein, it's painful, and then they ultimately take a lot more blood than they need for testing. And with that blood, they might not even be able to test as many things as you would think. So her idea was to revolutionize the healthcare sector. And with a small thing that she created, you would get a single prick that didn't hurt, and with that small piece of blood, she said that she could test over 100 items. So whether it be diabetes, HIV, cancer, a whole manner of things. But the twist comes because in 2018, the SEC in the United States charged Elizabeth Holmes with deceiving investors through fraud. She paid $500,000 in fines, she returned her shares, and she's barred from serving as an officer or director for 10 years. So her story starts back in about 2002. She goes to Stanford, which is the home of a lot of entrepreneurs and very interesting people. And at the age of 19, she drops out to start this company. And she was very ambitious from a very young age.
That's true.
A story is told of how a relative asked her what she wanted to be when she grew up. And she says, I'm going to be a billionaire. And the relative says, don't you want to be president? And she says, no, I'm going to be a billionaire and the president is going to marry me because I'm a billionaire. So she's a very ambitious child from a very young age. But I think what happens is that she finds herself rushing into success. She doesn't take time to mold and really cultivate this idea that she has. Because in the week we've talked about how passion is a very important thing. And if you're going to be a successful college dropout, I think that might even be a prerequisite. So at the height of this company, it was worth $9 billion with $400 million in venture capital. So she was doing incredible things, but the fame and the fortune eventually got to her. Yeah.
And I think that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at Elizabeth Holmes. I keep calling her company Theranos because you just think Elizabeth Theranos. But Elizabeth Holmes against the Virgin founder Richard Branson, against Steve Jobs, and against Bill Gates, and against Mark Zuckerberg as a cautionary tale of what an entrepreneur should not do. And the three things that stood out to me when I thought about Elizabeth Holmes and her story was, one, the glitz and glamour, if I can call it, the myth of the dropout entrepreneur. That you're going to leave school, you're going to drop out of whatever it is, however big you've gotten, and you're going to get out and you're going to succeed. And yes, she did succeed, but at great cost, personal and professional and financial cost. And the second thing is fake it till you make it. I have to ask this question because when you read the story, what is that halfway point between confidence and a scam? And the last thing I'm going to ask is, are we judging her so harshly because she's a woman? What do you guys think?
Okay, first of all, regarding Elizabeth Holmes, I think the Elizabeth Holmes of this world, they're like 1 in a million. And so this is something that we need to, keep encouraging, this kind of believing in the impossible, right?
Yes.
But as you said, I think this is then a cautionary tale of somebody trying to rush success.
Yeah.
And she was, if you look at the machine that they created, they called it the Edison. And they believed that, they called it the Edison because they knew that they would fail, like multiple times before
just
it
like
worked.
He did when he was trying to make the
light bulb.
The bulb, precisely, right? And so, they tried to combine a lot of tests in one small machine, right?
Very quickly.
Very quickly, precisely, right? But you can't, you can't achieve some of those things, overnight.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't move from a Nokia 3310 to an iPhone 10 in one day, right?
So it's true. It takes time.
Precisely.
But how do I, as an investor, as an entrepreneur, when I'm going to pitch a dream, and I have to fight against skeptics, and those skeptics are in the room. Those skeptics could be in my home. Those skeptics are everywhere. Yeah. So how do we go beyond this? Was she pitching a dream that could have worked given sufficient time, capital? Mostly time.
Yeah.
Or was she a scamist who woke up and decided, I'm going to lie to the world, that I'm going to do something that is impossible?
As much as I believe that she is a fraud, I believe that at some point she did have something that was going to revolutionize healthcare. But there was some snowball effect that happened. I think the money chased too quickly. You mentioned the FOMO effect of Silicon Valley.
Of Silicon Valley, precisely, as well. And over the last 20, 30 years, we've seen in Silicon Valley some brilliant innovations coming out. And investors who have a lot of money don't want to get left out. You don't want to miss out on the next big thing. And she was promising big things
so
regarding
people throw
public
money
health.
at her.
But regarding what you're saying, so I think right now we're talking about the fake it until you make it culture. Right? And that's also an acceptable practice in Silicon Valley and in entrepreneurship across the world.
Yeah, and I think...
Yeah, and I think, but as you're saying, there's a fine line between, faking it, but you can back it up, and faking it, and you can't quite back it up. You still have a lot of things to figure out. And I think that's where she was.
Perhaps, and I think, Tuje, you mentioned this earlier, this fake it till you make it was made worse because she didn't have the papers or the creds to back it up. And that goes back to the
And I think if you link this fake it till you make it with this argument of her being a woman, a very interesting thing about her, which I think is what captured the audience, or like the world, is the fact that she lowered her voice. So she would talk, instead of talking like what a natural woman would talk like, she lowered her voice, she had a baritone. And she started to dress like Steve Jobs. So instead of dressing like whatever she did, she wore turtlenecks constantly. And I think it's that thing of linking the fake it till you make it, but also being a woman, that intersection, which was very interesting. And I think I read a random article by on Psychology Today, and they were looking at Elizabeth Holmes, and they asked a random question. Did Elizabeth Holmes delude smart men by acting like a man? I don't know. And they gave...
She had to put on that act.
She did, yeah.
Because the American public, they love showbiz.
Okay.
Right? And Americans are also very good at pitching.
Yes.
And to be successful, particularly as a woman, and to stand out,
you might have to...
that is one of the things, that's one of the characters she had to cultivate, and she did a very good
Margaret Thatcher did the same thing, so...
I don't know, the person, anyway. There's a lady who wrote that article, and she asks two things. By intentionally projecting a masculine image, this projected male power, the guys who invested in her, they gave her the money because they had themselves projected back at them. And then, and there was this contradiction of a masculine projection, but a very beautiful woman who's doing this.
With
the baritone voice. So they weren't sure whether to see her as vulnerable or to see her as powerful, and that confusion made them give her money.
By the time you have a $9 billion valuation for a company at the age of 27, whatever she did,
hats off to you.
Hats off to her.
Hats off to you. What's the
She's
final
still a fraud, though.
Women. Was she judged harshly because she was a woman? Sheryl Sandberg has a book that is controversial called Lean In. And I don't know whether you should read it or not read it, make the determination for yourself. But she argues, based on valid science, that success and likability for women are negatively correlated. By that, I mean that the more successful you are, the less likable you're likely to be. And because Elizabeth Holmes was a young woman who was exceedingly successful, she was an extremely big target. So anyone who sees her wants to shoot it down.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
In part, and I think it's unfortunate, because we also have men who have made as many mistakes. Donald Trump and even Steve Jobs. His first Macintosh wasn't particularly a success. Donald Trump impoverished people in Atlantic City, I think, right? But he's not as demonized as she is.
Yeah.
So I only hope that I'm sure she will recover. Actually, right?
Yeah.
It's a question with her technology. It's a question of when and not if.
I agree completely. Yeah.
And I agree with you. Today's winning cartoon was from two J's Atahora, Ozone of the Star. We also toppled yesterday's winning cartoon and gave it to Ozone of the Star. Today's winning headline is from the Daily Nation. And I will end with a quote from Roger Stone. A man is not finished.
A woman.
Well, in this case, a woman is not finished when defeated, only when he quits. And that's the thing. She's only 35 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So until she says, I quit, I
Yep.
think that's a good brain
Absolutely.
would be wasting if we put her away.
Most definitely.
This is Winning Headlines. See you tomorrow.